Hello everyone. I just want to thank you all for coming and thank you for coming to this Inform Your Community Celebrate and Create event. First off, my name is Jake. Pronouns are he, they. I am a white man with a dark gray shirt, brown hair, wearing headphones, and a light bluish background. Closed captioning is enabled and can be turned on by participants. And here at Inform Your Community, we offer events that combine really important, impactful information with having fun. You can visit us at www.informyourcommunity.org and find our social media links at the bottom of our website. And make sure to tell your friends to sign up for our mailing list on the top right of our website. And of course, you can donate using our donate link at the top right of the page if you feel so, like, honored, I guess. And if you are watching the recording of this video, take a minute to like and subscribe. It helps us out. So this event here is part of our Celebrate and Create program where children engage in unique craft projects inspired by inclusive monthly celebration themes. And today's theme is Global Geography to Know. So geography, just to define it, is the study of physical places, human relationships with those spaces, and the environment. Of course, we can't tell you everything you should know about global geography because that would take a long time and it would cover the whole entire planet. But we want to give you some key points and hopefully motivate you to learn more on your own. For example, did you know that 71% of the Earth is covered in water? I often hear people say just 70, but the topic of geography is really important because a lot of Americans don't necessarily know a lot about it, or necessarily don't know a lot about it. There's a survey taken where people were asked questions about geography, foreign policy, and world demographics. And can you guess what we scored? I will say it is not as good as we'd like. Americans who took this survey only scored 53%, which means only a little above half the questions correct. Our guest co-facilitator today is Ed Shockley. Ed is a historian and research lead for AAR in Tallahassee, Florida. And just throughout the craft, if you have any questions or comments on the craft or the topic, please feel free to either unmute yourself or talk or write in the chat. And of course, we'd love to see your work in progress, so feel free to show your project to the camera as you make it and when it's complete. So, time to turn it over to Stacy, our expert crafter, who will help us with our craft today. So, Stacy, could you tell us more about why you selected this craft for today?
I absolutely can. I'm so happy to be here, Jake, and thank you, Ed, for coming. My name is Stacy, as Jake said, and I am a white woman with salt and pepper hair. I'm wearing a green shirt, kind of light green shirt, and I have a black background. And to tell you the truth, when I thought about doing this craft, I thought, well, I've got to do a globe. That's like obvious. Of course, I'm going to do a globe. And a globe is a kind of spherical shape that depicts the relative relationship between different land masses and includes land forms, like a country, for example, or a continent. The topography, which is, the features of the land, like the trees and so forth, the buildings, the mountains. It also includes latitude and longitude. So those are kind of the coordinates for us to be able to tell where on the planet you are. And um, it's it's supposed to, and also, sorry, it also includes poles, and usually we think of these as like the north and south poles. But I realized that it would be really hard to make the land masses exactly where we think they're supposed to go on this globe if we made one. And actually, it turns out globes don't actually exactly represent the size of the land masses. And also globes, the actual globe, Earth as a globe, is actually not even perfectly spherical. It's an oblate spheroid. Um, and there are more than two poles. So, learning all kinds of things about this, I said, you know what, though, we're going to make a globe-like decoration is what I figured we would go for. And so you folks have maps. We're going to be using those later. So I came up with this kind of next best thing to make this decoration. So we'll use real maps, albeit some of them may be very outdated. And you can kind of see on the maps the different topography. For example, you can see the kind of bumpiness here to show the land, that it's not really like a flat landmass, right? So that's what we're going to be doing. And to get started, I want to just tell you what you need. So everybody, and it's in the chat. Mike was nice enough to put it in the chat for us. Here's what everybody needs. So this is even if you have our kit, there's some things you still need. Okay. So you need, let's see, you need a bowl. Even if you have a kit, you want to have a bowl. You want to have a spoon. You want to have a cup of water. And I would say you should have a scissor. And that's not actually on that list, but I would recommend having a scissor. And I've got some towels here. This is going to be a messy craft. So you've got some towels. I would also very much recommend some kind of base for you to work on. I just happen to have a plastic cover, to tell you the truth. It's from a like to-go container for food. So I just happen to have a plastic cover that I'm going to work on so that maybe I help to keep my table a little bit more safe, because this is a very, very messy craft. I would not do it on your favorite table. And if you have your favorite clothes on, I would make sure you put like a towel over you, or something else you don't care as much about. So just to repeat that, everybody doing this craft today with us needs a spoon, a bowl, a cup of water, a towel, a base to work on, maybe just a plate, and I'd recommend a scissor. One other thing I would suggest is if you have some extra white glue in the house, go grab some extra white glue, because I think you have enough in the kit, but just in case, depending on how you make your glue wash, we'll talk about later, you might need more. The other thing I just have to tell you is be careful if you have very, very small children or if you have pets, especially with the balloons. Those are not pet or small children friendly items. So make sure you are very, very careful with those. If you do have our kit, your kit's going to come with some pretty cool things. And once again, I'll just show you, this is what or actually I'll show you for the first time. I don't think I showed you folks before. This is what we're going to be making today. These are our globes that we're going to be making. If you have our kit, you're going to have in there something called chicken wire, which you can see here, and I'll put it on the close-up too. Chicken wire. Oh, sorry, where am I? Oh, there we go. Chicken wire. You're going to have that in our kit. You'll also have a balloon. You will have a few different types of hook varieties. So I'm showing them in the screen. So a few different types of hook varieties, as well as a little bit of gold string. You'll also have some glue that we put into a little Ziploc for you. And you're going to have a map. You're going to have some version of white paper, maybe colored paper. Okay. And I think that is everything in your kit. So that's what the kit has. If you don't have our kit, that is totally okay too. We always make our crafts such that you can do them at home with your own materials. So if you don't have our kit, or either if you didn't register in time to get it, or if you didn't receive it yet, hopefully it's on the way. But I will say, we didn't have addresses for some of the folks who registered earlier. So if you did not get your kit, you registered, but you haven't gotten it yet, feel free to email us at info@informyourcommunity.org. info@informyourcommunity.org, and feel free to put that in the chat, hon. If you have info@informyourcommunity.org, then we can make sure we send you that kit. We sent it to you, or we can send it to you. If you don't have our kit, here's what you need. A balloon would be great. So a balloon, it could be one that's already blown up or not blown up. If you don't have our kit, you can also use a plastic bag. Sometimes any plastic bag will do, as long as it doesn't have a hole in it. It could be a Ziploc bag. It could be like a grocery store plastic bag if you have one. You need white glue. You can also do this with flour. You need some kind of a map, or it could be a map drawing that you made. It could be pulled up from a magazine. It could be something printed out online from copy paper. But anything that represents a map, a geographic location, or a culture, that's great too. You would want to have thread and a needle in order to make it so that you can hang it. And you'll have your parents help you with that. And like I said, thread, needle, and water, like I said, everybody would need. So you could still do this with all the same ingredients that we have, and those materials are in the chat right now. So if you don't have our kit, you have our materials there. Yeah, that's great. And Ed, I'm so happy you're here with us today.
Yes, well, thank you for having me. It's great to be here. This is such an important topic. I hope you learn a lot today and encourage people to keep learning about geography moving forward. I mean, it's such a big topic, so diverse, especially like things like natural disasters, right? How that impacts uh, both with geography, geography is impacted by it back, but we find things like volcanoes, earthquakes, hurricanes, famines, pandemics. All that stuff is, deeply fascinating and has such a big impact on this material.
That's an excellent point. It is absolutely fascinating to learn about. And actually, I'm going to Pompeii in April, so that's a place where a volcanic eruption really did have an impact there on that geography. So I'm looking forward to that. It'll be my first time. And in the meantime, let's assume these things won't be an issue for us right now, and we're just going to get moving on to this first step in the craft. So, and of course, if anybody has any questions or anything, or we're going too fast, feel free to ask us in the chat or just let us know. You can talk during the event. So for your first step, we're going to have to make paper strips. There's going to be a lot of these. So first, we want you to choose what paper you're going to use. So if you have our kit, this is your paper. It's really big, and you can see this covers, right, your base. So if you have ours, this is probably what you want to use. But you could also, just in case you might not have enough, you could also take your extra paper or just some regular copy paper if you have it, if you don't have our kit, and you're going to cut it up. Now, if you drew your own map, this is going to make you sad because you have to cut up your own map, right? So, but in any case, it's what you have to kind of do to make paper mache because you need to work with small pieces. If you have multiple pieces that you need to kind of cut up, you can actually cut these all up at the same time. So it goes a little bit quicker. So I'm going to show you now. I've got all my pieces kind of one on top of each other. You can see that in the close-up, and here I am. And I'm just going to start by ripping it. It's actually kind of fun to rip things. Don't do it unless you're supposed to, though. But if you are allowed to do it, it's fun to rip things. So I'm just kind of making big rips. So you can go ahead and do that right now in your material, in your paper that you have. Now, you're going to notice, like mine's starting to get really thick. I guess I'm not strong enough to do that, and that's fine. So once it gets too thick for you, you can take out sections of it and put one section aside and then work on a smaller section. You want your paper, and I'm going to show you in the close-up here. I'd say you definitely don't want it bigger to be this than this size. So I'll show you here too. This is about the size you want it. If it's smaller, that's great, but you definitely do not want it bigger than this. And this is about 1 inch by 2 inches. If you want it 1 inch by 1 inch, that's fine too. But definitely you don't want big pieces. And you're going to just keep going with that. Keep in mind that if there's a part of the map that you particularly like, you're going to maybe set that aside and make sure, like, if you liked this part of your map, maybe just set that aside from now, and we'll use that at the very end of the craft. You can cut it up later. There's a particular color you like, you can set that aside. And while you can use your scissor for this, it's actually better in paper mache if you rip it. I know that sounds crazy, right? Like we think it's neater when we cut, but paper mache having the rough edges makes the glue kind of stick better to it. So you can go ahead and just rip away and have fun with it. If you had a bad day, this is, Ed, if you had a bad day, it's a great way to kind of relax, right? You go ahead and rip to your heart's content, get out some of your frustration if it's been a rough day of it, right? So go ahead and keep doing that. Let's see if there's anything else I want to mention. Yeah, so if there's any that you particularly like, the colors are really cool. You can set those aside and make sure those end up on the outside of it. There's going to be a lot of overlap. So as you're doing this, If there's anything you're like, wow, that's a really cool design, I want that to really show out in mine, you can go ahead and just set that one piece aside, or there's a couple of pieces, because ultimately you're going to be doing a lot of overlap. You can keep going ahead and cutting, not ripping or cutting as much as you want. Bigger pieces make it harder to work with. And yeah, so and if it's really thick, it's going to make it a little bit harder to rip, which is why I keep having to set some pieces aside and do it.
So while our crafters are ripping their paper, can I tell you a bit about maps?
Yes, I would love that. Please do.
Sure. First map that we know of is about 2,500 years ago, the 6th century BCE. It was actually found in Babylonia. It's called the Imago Mundi, which is the image of the world in Latin. Different language called a different thing, but it's amazing map.
That's amazing. 2,500 years ago. That's a long time ago, Ed.
It absolutely is, and it took quite a bit longer than that, 1507, about 2,000 years, that America first appeared on
Okay, a little bit more recent, I guess, comparatively, although 500 years is, that's a long time ago too. And in 2013, I know Google Earth was created. And for those of you who don't know about Google Earth, if you Google Earth, it will show you satellite images. I don't know if Ed, if you know about this, but it's super cool. It'll show you satellite images, and it uses other sources as well, so you can see kind of what Earth looks like today from really, really far away.
Yes, and just in 2021, they updated Google Earth to actually put in a time lapse, so you can go as far back as in 1984, and you can see changes over time, and just see what happens. It takes under a minute about to watch it all develop. But,
That's amazing. All those years of changing from one thing to the next
yeah,
thing to that's great, and you can see it in under a minute. That's pretty neat. Well, that is a great point, and that's so cool. And I'm while our crafters probably want to go watch that right now, we're going to have you wait to go watch that, and we're going to have you work on this craft. So our next step, hopefully you've got all your pieces. I just realized that one leftover piece here. Hopefully you've got all your pieces cut up. And what I want you to do is you can go ahead and put a few pieces. Well, actually, okay, we'll get to that in a second. For our next step, I want you to pick your base. So this is important. I mentioned the balloon, the plastic bag if you don't have our kit, the chicken wire. So this is a big decision. You have to decide what your base is going to be. I will tell you the pros and cons, okay? Specifically, if you have our kit, if you use the chicken wire is great. It's a lot more fun to work with because how many chances do you, I mean, really in life, how many chances do you get to work with chicken wire, right? So it's really a fun material to work with. So that's great. But if you do use the chicken wire, it comes out kind of bumpy. You can see there's kind of going to be crevices and things like that. If you have lots of time to make many, many, many layers over this and you have lots of maps, you can eventually get it just as smooth as you can get with the balloon. Okay. So that's kind of the downside to the chicken wire. For the balloon, it is a lot easier to put the material on because it's smooth. But you need help blowing up the balloon. Okay. So you may not be able to blow up the balloon by yourself. It's a little tricky to blow up a balloon. And then even if you can blow it up, the trickier part is tying the balloon in a knot. I can tell you, I think I was probably 40, Ed, before I figured out how to tie a balloon. After you blow it up, then you have to really quickly tie it. It's a challenge. It's a challenge. So don't laugh at me. It's a challenge. So yes. So you have to choose which one you want. So if you're going to use your balloon, and if you may have a balloon at home, I will say if you're doing this with your own materials and you don't have a balloon and you're using a plastic bag, that's totally fine. You're going to blow it up just like you would with a balloon. You're going to tie it. Make sure you tie it so that the balloon part is really taut. It's not like mushy. Okay, it's really firm. If you're using like a Ziploc bag or something, there's going to be 2 points at the end because you blow up a Ziploc bag. There's going to be 2 points because it's square. You can literally just tape those two corners down. So even if you have a Ziploc bag you're using, totally just tape those corners down and you'll be fine. And you can even cut off the zipper part of a Ziploc bag, so it's a little bit easier to use. So whatever you're using here, I'm going to show you how to do it with the balloon. I'm going to blow up the balloon. Oh, look, we know, I see somebody's already got their balloon ready. So I've got my balloon. Now let's see if I've learned my lesson about how to tie it. Well, tying the balloon's kind of tricky. The other thing about the balloon is, in an ideal world, you want it kind of round-ish, right, to give that spheroid shape. If it's not round, that's okay, because we have that oblate spheroid thing we were talking about, which is fine too. So if you're using the chicken wire, okay, and I'm going to just show you here, you're going to want to take out, right now in your kit, the chicken wire is flat. It's kind of folded over. So you're going to want to unfold your chicken wire that came in your kit. And so you'll have a piece like this. Okay. Once you do that, you're going to just bend it. This is why I say it's kind of fun to work with chicken wire. You're going to want to bend it into the shape of a circle. So if you have the chicken wire, go ahead. You can actually do both and then just decide afterwards which one you like working with better. You just keep folding it. How fun is this chicken wire? So it is a little hard to do, and you can bend it, you can pull it. What you're going to do is, for the ends, because you don't want the points to be sticking out, you're going to want to go ahead and tuck the points underneath. Let's see if I can get it. So there's a point sticking out there. I'm going to go ahead and just tuck the point underneath another piece of the chicken wire, and you can bend them in. That's another way to do it. So as long as you don't have any points at the end, and this may take a little while, as long as you don't have any points at the end sticking out, and it kind of looks somewhat like a sphere. And the last thing you need to make sure is that there's no big gaps between the start and the end of this chicken wire. What you'll do is you'll take one of those points on the chicken wire and fold it over the opposing side to make sure it's really like connected. Okay, so you're like connecting the two ends of that chicken wire, so there's no big gaping holes in it. So I'm just cleaning mine up now, making sure it's all connected. And don't worry if it's an exact sphere, it's fine. Truthfully, you can even turn this into a square. It could be a square. It's your decoration. You can make it whatever shape you want. Once you're done making sure there's no big gaping holes in it, you may want to just check, see if there is any way to make it, tuck here or pull out here, push in there, and see if you can get it a little bit more round. But that's pretty good for chicken wire, I would say. Okay. If you did have a tennis ball, you could put the chicken wire around the tennis ball and use that, but then you'd have to decoupage over paper mache over the tennis ball. I wouldn't recommend it. But as long as it's relatively close to this, you'll be just fine. Let me just checking to see if there's anything else I want to add. While folks are working on this, Ed, can you tell us some values associated with this idea of geography as a topic? What should we know?
Sure. Some of the values and include this idea that, it's a small world, like, the Disney song and the theme park ride.
Love it.
And it just means we all share the world together. And it's connected to this idea of global citizenship, that we are all part of a global community, with rights and responsibilities as a result. And that leads to another value, which is, solidarity, that we all share a common interest that binds us together. And it allows us to, come together despite some differences, but also that it becomes things that lead us to see that things like culture are important values as well. And that geography and culture, things like that, often relate to each other.
That's it. That makes a whole lot of sense. And it's important to know, though, that as we familiarize ourselves with these terms, like culture and geography can be connected, but also terms like culture, race, ethnicity, nationality. Some of these are like they may be geographic related, they may not be geographic related, and there's a lot of confusion and misunderstanding about whether these are, certain labels for people are geographically related and in what way. And so we can label people accidentally incorrectly because we assume there's some connection there. So for example, someone who is from the country of India is Asian, and a lot of people don't know that. They're South Asian. Someone who's Black could consider themselves, or could be Caribbean or African, depending on what their nationality is. And some people who are Black in the United States may prefer to be called Black, or they may prefer to be called African American, almost regardless of whether their families from the Caribbean, or whether their family might have any roots to Africa. So some people prefer the term Black. People from Puerto Rico, for example, are U.S. American citizens, and sometimes people forget that, and they will say that people who are Puerto Rican are not American, and that's not true. They're totally American, because Puerto Rico is American territory. And then one of the other kind of misunderstandings we have is that because North America is a continent, that we tend to think of those who live in the United States as Americans. We're U.S. Americans. We're United States Americans, because the North American North American continent also includes Canada and Mexico. So really, it's slightly more accurate to say that we are U.S. Americans. So when you don't know, when you're not sure what's the right terminology to use, it's always good to look it up, to ask somebody. Just be cautious if you're looking things up online. Don't just automatically believe the AI. Don't over rely on that AI result at the top.
Yeah, those are definitely important distinctions. And I definitely think when in doubt, ask someone, how they view themselves. What do they want to be seen as, what they want to be called. And of course, there's one additional benefit to geography, which is travel. I'd love to hear, where have you been traveled to, Stacey?
Oh, I've traveled to a few places. I went to Japan. That was a long flight. I went to Russia. That was a long flight. Hawaii, which is in the United States, but not on the mainland of the United States. But that's a United States state. Went to Hawaii. That was a really long flight. How about you, Ed? And of course, we'd love to hear anybody else where you've traveled to, or if you want to put it in the chat.
Sure.
And
I mean, I've been all throughout the United States. Eventually found my way over the United Kingdom for a while. Germany, Greece, eventually to India, which is a long flight as well. There and back is both very long, but
and
not so much these days.
it is harder. It's hard to get away sometimes, and it's
Yeah,
expensive. And actually, in the chat, somebody put, "Has anybody been to Galapagos Islands?" And actually, I've been to Galapagos Islands. I can't believe I forgot that, but I have been to Galapagos Islands. It was also far away, and it was really an amazing trip. And the seal, when we went to one of the islands, there's seals were like right there, like you're waiting for the boat, and there's a seal just hanging out on a bench. It was super cool. I highly recommend it. So okay, so it's good that you did ask folks. Now, and let's see, Maya's been to England, France, Germany, Wales, and Ireland. Wales and at least some portion of Ireland is going to come up, and England in a little bit later. I think we might talk about that. So that's great. I'm super glad you asked, by the way, Ed, before everybody starts the actual next part of this craft, because it's messy. So is everybody here prepared to get messy? Give me a thumbs up. Are you ready to get messy? Otherwise, I don't know if this is the craft for you. I got a couple of thumbs up here because this is a messy craft. Okay, we need to make there we go. Maybe we got some thumbs up. We need to make a glue wash. Okay, so this is how glue wash works. All it is water and glue. If you don't have our craft kit, you can use water or glue. White glue is preferable, or you can use flour and water, which is really cool. Just flour. Who knew? So I'm going to put my little balloons aside for a second. I have my bowl here. And what you would do is you would take a glue packet. Now, in theory, you can pull off the tape, would be the best way to open your glue packet. But it's not the easiest thing to do if you can't find an end to where the tape was put on. I'm kind of doing it now, but you see, it's a little rough to do it that way. ideally, you're going to be able to do that. If you can't, and I'm having trouble, so if I'm having trouble, I don't know if there's any hope for anybody else. The other way to do it is push all the glue down to the bottom, the opposite side of where the tape is, okay? And then take your scissor and just cut the top. That's a perfectly appropriate way to do this. You don't need to be messing with pulling that tape off. Now, you're going to open it, which is actually kind of feels, you like sensory stuff, that kind of felt fun to do. Here's what I would like you to do. You're going to take your bowl, okay? And now I'm actually not going to do it in my bowl. I'm going to do it over here. I have a little, this area here is filled with water, so that's technically my bowl. So there's already some water in it. You're going to take your bowl. Don't put the water in yet, but you're going to pour your glue into your bowl, okay? If you don't have any more white glue at home, okay, I would recommend getting every little bit of glue out of this bag because you might need it. Okay. And you can set this bag aside. You may even want to, and you can kind of see me doing it in the close-up, you can put a little bit of water into the bag and then mush it around a little bit to get out some more of the glue. If you don't have extra glue at home. If all you have is the glue in our kit, you want to get every bit of glue out of that bag. If you have glue at home, don't worry, you're fine. So then you can take the rest of that glue that's in there, try to mush all of that out. There you go, doing it right there. And then go ahead, I'm taking my little towel here and I'm setting this aside, the rest of that container. I'm taking, I've got my spoon ready. I am going to take the water and go ahead and put the water in here. Now, I already have my water in, so I'm not really going to put it in. I already put my water in here, but you're going to want to put about as much water as you have glue. So it's like 50-50 glue and water. I'd say it's about 2 tablespoons, but you can kind of eyeball it, like just look at it and put about as much glue, about as much water as was in the plastic bag. Okay, and then what you're going to do, you can see me doing it in the close-up, is mix it around. If you accidentally have too much glue in here, that's easy. You can add more water. If you accidentally have too much water, then you have to add more glue. If you don't have an extra glue kit, then you kind of need to use your glue at home. Okay. So you see that this is a nice watery kind of consistency. It doesn't really have to be perfectly mixed together. And sorry that it's so noisy for me to mix it up. You can mix it up with a spoon or chopstick or anything you have. And this is water-based glue. It will wash off pretty easily. And you're going to see that it's going to be a kind of milky consistency.
What's next?
Oh, well, this is the fun part, Ed. You folks ready for this? This is where you're really going to get messy, and this is going to be the most of the rest of our time together, okay? This step. So what I want you to start off with is I want you to go ahead and put a few of the papers, and I'm going to go ahead and set aside my kit. And actually, I just want to mention for our folks that are here today, we do have a raffle for not a raffle, but a prize if you're attending here today and you've registered. So we have this beautiful journal. I don't know if you see it here. I'll put it over here. We have this beautiful journal. We have 2 of these. We're going to send out to the lucky winner. If you can see it, but it's got a cool look. It's got a cool globe on the front of it with that latitude and longitude. So if for that, we're gonna have a little prize later. So and Mike and Ed and Jake, if I forget, remind me that we have to get a winner for that prize. Okay, so what I want to do is put a few pieces of your map in your glue wash. Put a bunch in there because the wetter it is, the easier it is to work with. This is where your hands start to get messy. Believe me, it is only the beginning of getting messy, and you're going to want a towel nearby. So go ahead and start putting the pieces next to into your water wash. okay? Your glue wash. I'm going to go put my globes aside. And you can start to see here, this is all you're doing is you're layering piece and piece and piece on top of each other. So this is kind of a half done one. You can just see it's pieces layered on top, and eventually it all kind of dries together. So you've got your pieces in your glue wash. If you have white pieces and pink pieces or whatever color paper you have that you want to use, that's fine too. What you're going to do, I'm going to do it a little bit based on my balloon, a little bit based on my chicken wire, so you can see it both ways. And you're going to start to make the base. Now, if you're using your balloon, it's a little easier, okay? Because you're just literally just wrapping your balloon with your, like, here, let me show you on this one. Ooh, I've got a terrible angle this time in my camera here. Where we go? Where are we? Here we go. There you go. On the close-up. There we go. That's the sweet spot right there. So on the close-up, you can see you're just putting the piece on. If you have the balloon, that's easy. Taking another piece, make sure you have some overlap. That helps. Put another piece on. It may stick up a little bit as these get wetter. It will be easier to wrap around it. It won't stick up as much. And you're just going to keep doing that. So that's if you have the balloon. If you have the chicken wire, it's a little bit harder. So much fun. So much fun. Also note, I'll just show you one more time on the balloon. If you're using the white paper or copier paper, it's a little thinner. It's going to get wetter quicker in that glue wash, and it will mold a little bit easier. So if you're finding it's not molding easily for you, just keep it in that glue wash, keep the paper in the glue wash a little bit more, and it will eventually start to mold really nicely. If you have the chicken wire, okay, so I'll show you in the close-up on the chicken wire. Look how cool that chicken wire looks. You're still going to take those same pieces of paper, that map or the plain paper, whatever you want, and you're going to put it on the chicken wire, okay? A little bit you're going to have to, it's kind of a leap of faith here, because as you do it, you're going to notice, oh, it's not sticking really well. I've got to do another piece. It's still not sticking. You kind of have to just let them stay on there. What you can do is fold over, let's see in the close-up, fold over the paper so that it's wrapped around a piece of the chicken wire. And then the glue will help it stick to the other side. So if you're finding it's not sticking really well, you can keep doing that, is wrap the paper over the chicken wire and kind of pinch it together, like folding it, and that will work. And you're just going to keep doing that. The chicken wire is a little bit more challenging, but it is kind of fun. So just fold it over. Here, I can show you here. You're folding it over, you're pinching it over the side. When you take the paper out of the glue wash, make sure you're only taking one piece. If you take more than one piece, it's not going to wrap around because it will be too thick. So, and I'm going to mix in some of the plain paper pieces in here. So when it's done, it'll look kind of speckled, which I think will have a kind of cool effect. You can do that. If you want to try for stripes, you can. Maybe a little bit more challenging. And then you're just going to keep going, filling any holes with covering any holes with the paper, okay? Now, if you're using the chicken wire, eventually you want to make sure that there's one gap in the chicken wire, a little small gap that you're not completely covering, okay? So try to leave a little tiny gap. Usually with the chicken wire, that's kind of easy because there ends up being more gaps. And if you're doing the balloon, what you'll notice about the balloon, do I have my example here? Hold on a second. You'll notice the balloon is going to automatically give you a little hole because the end of the balloon you don't want to cover. So if you have the balloon, don't cover the end of the balloon, leave that hanging out. We'll use that later. If you have the chicken wire, you're going to leave a little bit of hole in it So while our crafters are working on this, and this is going to be the bulk of our time, if you have any questions on it or if it's not working for you, let me know. But I'm wondering, Ed, can you tell us about some geography related dates that we should know about?
Sure. So, 1984, about 40 years ago, two National Geography organizations, the National Council for Geographic Education and the Association of American Geographers, created the five themes of geography, which they designed to basically facilitate K through 12 geography education. Though from the 54% statistic earlier mentioned about the testing, maybe hasn't helped as much as we hoped. But the themes are pretty simple. It's location, which would be things like latitude or longitude, place, which are the landforms, topographical elements, like you'd see when the map is raised. Maybe that's telling you something about the topography of it. We have the human environmental interaction, which is how do we interact with the world around us in a physical way, or so in a personal way, but movement, such as how people travel from place to place. And finally, regions, which, when we think of regions, we mean areas that have distinct similarities involving the people living inside them. Not always people, but sometimes.
It's great to know. And regions, they may have a clearly defined boundary, but sometimes the boundaries are kind of vague. For example, a continent is a really big geographic region, and it's a large area with adjoining land on the surface of the earth. Typically, it's surrounded by water, and there are 7 continents. And they were once connected. Does anybody know what all the 7 continents connected were? What that's called? I bet you know,
I
Ed.
think I know.
Yeah, tell us.
I think it's Pangea.
It's Pangea. That's right. I think it's just a fun word to say too. Yeah, it is. And people can move within these areas. Um, and regions can, these boundaries of different regions can change from human-made reasons or for natural kind of geographic related reasons, like natural disasters and things like that. In terms of man-made, for example, in 1966, the Sykes-Picot Agreement divided what's considered the Arab world into nation states, which is really interesting. So that's not the way it was divided prior to that, but some folks got together, representing different governments, and created those borders. So those were kind of man-made. And the United Kingdom, and this is what I think Meyer mentioned, traveling to some of these places. I'm sorry, that's not what I was going to say. I was going to say that United Kingdom and France actually were involved with that, with the Sykes-Picot Agreement. And the United Kingdom, which is related to what Maya was going to say, is comprised of, is a sovereign state that's comprised of 4 different countries. So here's another example of how regions could be kind of, the boundaries could shift and things like that. So the United Kingdom is actually comprised of England, which is 57 million people about, Scotland, which is 5 million people about, Wales, which is about 3 million people, and Northern Ireland, which is about 2 million people. And I don't know those by heart. I definitely have that written down on a piece of paper because I could not memorize that. But in any case, so United Kingdom includes all 4 of those different places, which we also often, sometimes people use United Kingdom and England interchangeably. And there's two different things. England is part of the United Kingdom. But then also England, Scotland, and Wales are all part of a single island that together is referred to by a geographical term, Great Britain, which we often just call Britain. So it's really interesting because I always use those 3 kind of interchangeably: Britain, England, United Kingdom, and they're totally not the same thing.
Yeah, when you start adding additional layers to geography, it gets pretty complicated. And, sometimes regions shift, borders change around, people move or they find new people and run them, and then they have to go through these different processes like cultural adaptation, and they have to adjust to changes in that new environment, with new types of food, maybe housing, all those kinds of things. And we keep coming back to natural disasters, and sometimes that will force those things to happen as well on at a different scale and a different pace.
That makes a lot of sense. And by the way, before I wanted to say something else about that, but before I do, I want to mention, if you're running out of the pieces that you made wet, always make some more wet, because the wetter it is, the easier this project is for you. So just keep adding pieces of your dry pieces into that blue wash, so that you've always got some wet pieces in there. But so yes, so these boundary shifts and natural disasters can affect how people live within them, but sometimes these kind of changes can happen just based on who's governing a different location, right? So yeah, so it could be, I'm thinking like revolutions, right? But it could be that laws change, people who are governing change, and they make certain people are no longer welcome in a certain space, or they make rules that make people no longer welcome in a certain space, and then people end up kind of moving out of a location. I wouldn't, sometimes it's voluntary, but a lot of times it's not. A lot of times people end up leaving a location because they have to. They're no longer welcome there. It's no longer safe for them either. And then this results in what's called a diaspora. And this is when people are dispersed from their homeland, in this case by force. And there's some really famous and unfortunate examples of this. Irish diaspora after the Great Famine, the 5 tribes during the Trails of Tears, that's in the United States, the African diaspora due to enslavement, and Jews and Muslim diasporas during the Spanish Inquisition. So, and these are all cases of kind of forced movement from your homeland.
But on a more positive note, there
Thank
also
you.
lots of different groups of people with lots of different geographic locations and backgrounds can come together and create a safer world.
I bet you have some examples of that.
I bet I do have some examples for that. There are 32 countries in what is called the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, founded in 1949, and then it had only 12 countries in it, and it's continued to expand. And this group works together to keep its members safe and foster community, and just build a more secure world as best it can for everyone involved. And more recently, in 2022, there were 138 countries who signed the Nagoya Protocol that regulates bioprospecting and works to prevent what's called biopiracy, basically taking the natural resources of the world without, giving anything back, and helping the natural world stay a little more protected than it was prior.
That is good to know. I appreciate the good news there. While we're learning this, important information, our crafters have been really busy. I'm wondering how far everybody's been getting. It looks like some of you, thanks Jake for the head up on the warning on time. It seems like some folks are kind of, oh, there you go. I see one. Oh, that's fantastic. I love it. And how clever to put it in the cup to help, because it's hard to work on it once you have it all over the place, right? So really clever. Great job putting that in the cup to hold on to it. I wish I had thought of that. That was a good idea. And you'll notice too that you have to kind of turn it around. If you don't finish the craft while we're talking, or you feel like, so I have some like gaps on the top here. Like I said, one is okay. You need one. I've got one here. I've got another one here, another one here. So if you find that you have gaps, or that you're not able to get to the other side of it right now, because maybe the whole thing starts to fall off once you move it around, you can just put it. I think a great example is putting it in a cup, or someplace that you can leave it flat. You can just leave it somewhere flat, let it dry, and then you can start turning it over and doing the next side of it. So don't feel like you certainly can finish this craft while we're talking, but don't feel like you completely have to. It is a very forgiving project, which I love about paper mache. It not only, and I'm doing it right now, I'm like rinsing off my hands a little bit. So it's forgiving on the skin, and it just washes off. But also if in the end you have a gap you didn't like, or something's kind of sticking up and you want to fix that, you can actually go on in later and just put some more of that glue wash, which you can make at any time if you have the white glue, and put it, hold it down. You can definitely do that and kind of wet it and push down the other pieces. You can keep adding layers, as many layers as you want. So it's a pretty forgiving craft, and you can do this over time. For the last step, it's actually not so bad. The last step's the easiest step. You wait until it dries. So the hardest part of this last step is patience, because it could take up to 2 days for it to dry. You're welcome to put it on a windowsill or somewhere where the heat will get to it a little bit more easily. But it could take up to 2 days. You can keep checking on it, see if it's dry. You may also want to turn it over. So especially if you do have it in some kind of a cup or something, wait a few hours, maybe shift it over a little bit. And so, but you can keep checking on it. And you can, when it is completely dry, it will be hard. So you'll know it's dry. It won't be wet anymore. It'll have a kind of very cool consistency. You can hear it. This is the one with the chicken wire underneath. And this is the one with the balloon underneath. What you're going to do if you have the one with the balloon, and by the way, you can use, if you did the balloon this time, you can always make a second one, again, with the chicken wire or vice versa, with the balloon underneath. The cool thing about it is if you took a little pin, maybe with parental help, and poked a tiny hole in this balloon, you would be able to pull the entire balloon right out of there once it deflates. If you don't want to do that, you could go ahead and wait until it's deflated. So this one's been around a while. And so eventually I'm going to be able to pull this right out of it. And I'm going to show you though, I'm just going to cut it a little tiny bit. The air is going to come right out, and look how easy that was to get out. And now the balloon's not inside anymore. And what you have to wait till it's completely dry though, because if you do it when it's not dry, the whole thing will just collapse. So wait until it's completely dry, then you'll have your hole there. So if you have your balloon all dried and you've got the hole in it, or you've got your paper mache one, okay, and hopefully you've left a little hole in, I will tell you what to do. Let us see. So you have some hook options if you have our kit. So you have 3 options. You have some string, you have our little hook, and you have this, which actually, believe it or not, is a little pair of tweezers, which if you don't want to use it for this, you can literally just use it as tweezers. It's kind of cute. So if you have the balloon one, the hole that you probably have left is probably not going to be the right size for this hook. You can try to get it in. Maybe I can squeeze it in. And in which case, there's your hook, which is kind of cool. But your hole might be too small. When you are trying to do it, if you're using this one, make sure you really close it as much as you can to make it as small as possible to get it in. Otherwise, what you can do is take this hook and you can poke a hole into the top of it. And I'll do this actually. It turns out on my paper mache one that I made previously, I did not leave a very good hole. So what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to go ahead and poke a hole in it. See if I can do that. You're going to poke a hole in it with, ideally, there you go. Poke a hole in it with your hook. Okay. With that, you can go ahead here, bend this a little bit, bend your hook a little. Okay, it might be easier if you can see it over right. Bend your hook a little, put it in where you put the hole, and then you have the hook that way. Oops, there you go. Then you have the hook like that. Or if you have the hole in the chicken wire so that you can see the wire, you can go ahead and put your hook in there, squeeze it together. You can even squeeze the top together. And then if you like the look of the gold, you can use the gold and do it like that. So if you want to hang it on a doorknob or something like that, you'll have a nice bigger bigger space to hang if you used a gold. Depending on your angle, you may be able to go ahead and just put that gold string in directly over the chicken wire and do it that way. And then you can go ahead and tie your end in a knot. So there's a bunch of different ways that you can make your hanging piece for your craft, but all of them require you doing it at the end after it's all dried, which we can't do today. I did also want to say you can add up to 3 layers on top of this. You can make different patterns with it. So if you did want to do kind of a stripy looking look, you can do that. You can also, we haven't done this here, but you can actually make 3D elements on this. So if you wanted to make it so it looked like there was more topography to it, like you can make mountains on it, you can go ahead and take your pieces of, especially ones that have been in the glue wash for a long time, take your pieces of paper and kind of make a pulp out of it, either by just squishing it all together or making it like shredding it into even smaller pieces. And by doing that, you then have stuff you can make 3D elements with and put things on top so that, you know, if you wanted to make cool 3D designs with it, you know, make a tree sticking out of it or something like that, you can paint it later if you want. All of that is fun stuff you can do later. And the other thing you can do is you can actually shellac it, which basically means to put a shiny material on top of it. Could be, oh, look, I see one. That's great. I see one. Thank you for sharing that. That looks amazing. You can, oh, yeah, it's fantastic. Thank you for sharing. That looks so great. So you can go ahead. You can either put like an actual finish, a shiny finish over it, or you can use a top coat of a nail polish and paint over it. Make sure you have your parents' consent for that one, or for any kind of a shellac you might use. But it is a fun ways to make it look kind of shiny as well. So you have your new globe. Hopefully you have lots of options to work with it. It looks great. Thank you for sharing that. And Jake, take it from here.
Yeah, so I just want to say thank you to everybody again for coming to this Geography to Know, Celebrate, and Create discussion. And now you all have these amazing globe decorations. Thank you to Ed and Stacy, and thanks especially to our wonderful crafters. You had a lot of patience today with this very messy and very fun craft while we learned a little bit about geography. And because the topic of getting to know global geography is an ongoing conversation, we'll send our event video and infographic in a follow-up email by the end of next week, which we encourage you to share with others if you can. Getting informed by coming to this event is a great way to start to learn about the topic, and there are a lot of other things you can do, like you can visit some unique geographic locations and wonders of the world, either in person or virtually. For example, if you can't visit New York, I recommend checking out the One World Trade Center time-lapse of its 11-year build outline. And there's also some really cool games you can play on your computer that help educate about geography. One of the most well-known is the Oregon Trail. And if you like reading, you can find information about some well-known people who have some special relationships to geography, like Amerigo Vespucci, Amelia Earhart, Carmen Sandiego, Henry Kissinger, and Ptolemy. And of course, after you receive our infographic in our email after the event, again, please share that with others so they can learn more about this important topic. If you don't mind, please just take a moment right now to take our quick poll. These are not the same questions you'll get in the survey. And our email will include another brief survey of what you thought of the event itself. We'd really appreciate it if you took the time to respond. Your feedback is very important to us. Again, just a reminder, you can check out our upcoming events at informyourcommunity.org. You'll also find other great Inform Your Community events, not only our Celebrate and Create program, but events from other programs as well. Our next Celebrate and Create event, if you like this one, is November 16th, where we'll learn some kid-friendly ideas about financial wellness while making your own wallet to carry money. Tickets, materials, and shipping are all free, so please sign up. Remember, only those signed up a week before the events will receive the kits mailed to their homes. And you can check out events from other programs that are happening sooner at informyourcommunity.org. And again, if you're watching this on YouTube, please be sure to like and subscribe for our channel. It really helps us out. And please consider donating to cover the cost of materials and shipping if you can afford it, as it helps keep our events free for those who can't. And just thank you all again for coming today and helping inform your own communities based on what you learned today.